Good morning, guys. Wonderful to have you as part of our education program that we're rolling out to our clients. We've spoken about the One Haven proposition, and obviously with the mixture of financial planning and property as your expertise coming together as a bundle. We're seeing some of our clients are really impressed with what you guys are doing. So obviously keen to get your insights into just the opportunities that are out there at the moment for property, and then managing the risk side of it as well. And then specifically today, we wanted to have a chat about the opportunity that's available in the self-managed super fund space, and just a lot of people tend to overlook that, and I know you guys have a wealth of experience. So yeah, why don't you just give us a little bit of background about yourselves?
Thanks, Matty. Yeah, thanks for the kind words, mate. We're looking forward to have a good chat to you today around obviously our business and what we do, and obviously what Matt and I are involved in the property space. So my background is I head up in my partner in One Haven, so I'm the Officer of Effective Control here in the business. We've been doing this for close to a decade now, mate, working in property. So I'm licensed in 5 different states to advise around Australia. So our head office is in Victoria, but we do a lot of work out of Queensland, Adelaide, a little bit in ACT, Victoria, and obviously Perth as well. Our roles, our business, our model has been designed as a very holistic service, very education based, to get clients onto a plan and creating wealth via property. And obviously, I said I'm a partner in the business and helping run it. Love what I do, mate. Doing it for a decade. Heavy investor myself. We're going to talk about super later. I have an SMSF myself, so yeah, I love the pros and what property offers, and yeah, loving what we do. So, and Matty boy.
Yeah, well, thanks, Matt. Thanks very much for inviting us along today to have a chat. My background for my sins, I've been senior financial advising for about 25 years. I was a fellow of FINSIA, and I've also was a qualified self-managed superannuation specialist, so SMSF specialist. So I'm a very big fan of using your super to create wealth through property. Obviously, it has to be done correctly, and advising clients to go onto that journey. So yeah, big fan, and thanks for having us.
Yeah, wonderful. So just for background, we get a lot of property investors coming into, they're seeking wealth growth through property, and the big sleeper that we see is the self-managed super fund. As part of our loan assessment process, we've got to look at their assets and liabilities, and what we see more often than not is a really healthy super balance, whether that's they've set up a self-managed super fund or not. Mostly we see a lot of retail and industry funds, but I use my super. A lot of our staff on board, they use their super to actively grow wealth through property and other. So yeah, I just wanted to get into that today and really, pick your brains about, one thing we spoke about the other day was the origins of super, which I was not aware of. So Matt, do you want to just talk us through, why was super set up in the first place, and
Yep.
the advantages of using it to buy property and leverage and grow wealth?
Yep, thanks, Matt. Yeah, sure. The self-managed super was actually originally designed for professionals to buy business real property. In other words, solicitors, barristers, dentists, doctors, etc., to buy where their practices are and lease them off them. So that's essentially what SMSF was there for. And then it kind of evolved over the years, and we had a big rush of super funds getting set up in the early 2000s because you actually couldn't buy direct shares through the retail platforms, BT, Macquarie, Colonial, all those, where a lot of the super was held. So people would set up their own super fund to buy direct shares. Now that's changed over the years. So now people can buy direct shares just through these platforms. So you'd also have a lot of people who've got self-managed super funds probably sitting idle there. So in reality, the only reason you'd have an SMSF is to actually buy property. So from a cost point of view, and an efficiency point of view. So what a lot of people don't realise, Matt, is you can have actually up to 6 members now in a super fund. So it used to be 4, now it's 6. And that means you can have, say, mum, dad, daughter, son, all throw roll their super into the SMSF fund. So they're not paying 4 lots of fees, they're paying 1 lot of fee. And then that super fund can then set up a bare trust and go buy an investment property, and they can all share in the growth of that property as the years go on. So there's a lot of flexibility, and it's a great vehicle to buy property in, because in my personal opinion, super is a very long-term investment, and so is property. So the two should go hand in hand, and so I think it's a great vehicle for it.
It's a good point you raised there, though, and this is probably something that a lot of people don't realise, is that they think they have to have a quantum, and this is a lot of the barbecue talk that we get asked a lot of questions on regularly, is around how much do you have to set up a self-managed super fund. But what you just alluded to, and we discussed this the other day, was that it's really flexible, i.e. you can come together with mates, family members, colleagues for joint ventures to do property projects, so more of an in and out flip kind of thing. But wonderfully, it is, I guess the key message there is it is really flexible, and people shouldn't probably disqualify themselves without having full knowledge. So I guess that we come back to the education aspect of what we've been discussing about how to get the message out to people that there are other options. It doesn't have to be outside of super that you're doing stuff. And in fact, there's probably some pretty compelling tax propositions or rationale for doing more stuff inside super, I'm guessing as well, Matt.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, like a lot of people buy an investment property in their own name, obviously because they get the tax benefits now, there's appreciation, etc. But super is actually it's a different tactic altogether, because you're actually getting a deferred tax benefit. So a super fund only pays 15% tax, so you're only going to get a 15% basically offset of that tax on your depreciation, on the revenue, on the rent, etc. But the beauty about it is when you retire, when you get over the age of retirement age, that property is capital gains tax free. There's zero capital gains tax. So if you buy a property for 700 and it's worth, say, 2 million in 15 years time, then that $1.3 million gain's tax free. So you're not getting the benefit now, but you're certainly getting a big benefit down the track. And that's why I say it's a long-term investment. It's a long-term play, but it makes a lot of sense. But also a lot of people think, if mum and dad have got 300,000 and I've only got 50, how does that all work? So what happens every year, an auditor has to do an audit on a super fund, and the auditor will determine each member benefit. Okay, each member. So it's all prorated. The revenue's prorated, the growth's it's all prorated by the auditor. No one's going to be disadvantaged by having someone with a lower balance in, and no one's going to be advantaged by someone having a bigger balance. It's all worked out on an annual basis. So there's no worries there at all.
Yeah, it's definitely from my side. I guess we talk about a property-based, what the inquiry was saying, mate, in regards to our business. And I've been doing this for 10 years, been over at One Haven for 4 to 5 now. I reckon in the last 12 months, our inquiry on clients coming with SMSF either set up or looking to set up their SMSF and needing assistance in buying property through the super fund. I reckon now, between Matt and I, it would be 25% of our business in acquiring assets in that space, whereas 3 years ago, it might have been 5 to 10%. So for me, that already shows out there that the education piece that people are receiving, the knowledge people are getting now in this space in regards to looking more into their super, is becoming more relevant out there and more prevalent, because obviously now we just see it by inquiry, and I base it all off that. So there's no doubt now people are becoming more educated. They go, I've got to set myself up earlier. I've got to get my super underway. There's more talk about out there. 20, 30 years ago, people didn't really think about their super. There's definitely more conversation happening out there, and the opportunity to get earlier and put property inside your super is becoming really important and quite appetizing, right, for people to do. And the other point, which we're seeing with clients especially, is families want to set up their kids. Our generational wealth is so important, and a lot of people at the moment finding it difficult to do in their own name because of cost of living pressures and everything going on in the world. The SMSF super side of things is a great way to set up their kids and family wealth to get them ahead over time, obviously, which is obviously important with what families and people are going through at the moment.
It's critical.
Yeah,
we're seeing a lot of concern. We're doing a lot of refinancing to try and trim up people's their core costs. But there is a lot more inquiry on the super side as well, because potentially because there's a lot more lenders in that space now. So when the majors pulled out a few years ago, because it's just way too manual for them, they want things that are automated. They're trying to get economies out of bringing their staffing costs down, closing branches. But what's happened in the lending space is that we've got a lot more non-bank lenders or sub. They're all either funded or owned by generally the 3 of the 4 majors. So we're seeing a lot more lending options, and I wonder whether that's stimulating people to also then think, well, okay, a lot more people are doing this. There must be some advantages in doing it. And you guys have highlighted that we've got the flexibility, we've got I guess the demand for it out there. The people are looking for it, and they're interested to learn more about how they can use their super get into property and have another investment. They might already have a couple inside their or outside their super, but to have one or two and have that flexibility to be able to combine with other people or joint venture with other people is certainly an option that's there as well, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. And I think there's a few misnomers. People don't understand. They think self-managed. I've got to do a lot of work. It's all done for you these days. It's all automated. The accountant set it up for you, the bare trust, the audit, the compliance. You've got to be the responsible director, obviously, and make those investment decisions. But it's not as self-managed as it used to be. It's a lot more automated, so it's not as scary as it might have been in the past as well. So I think it's become more available to greater masses than it used to be. It used to be very expensive to set up a super fund, expensive to run it, etc., etc. Now the crossover between having a retail super fund and a self-managed super fund, the crossover point where it becomes cheaper to have your super fund is getting lower and lower every year because of the efficiencies that the systems are bringing. So I think now is a really good time for people to start looking at creating that generational wealth, as Hamish was talking about, and by pooling their resources. I think I totally agree with Hamish. We're seeing a lot more activity now because I think it's much more available and more cost efficient.
Yeah, wonderful.
And what I'll say about Matt's point there, because it's becoming more relevant and more prevalent out in the marketplace, is that clients still need a lot of education around it. Because they see self-managed super fund and buy a property, their headspace going into buying and purchasing property inside their super, they treat it like it's in a personal name. There is certain things you need to look for inside of a purchase inside super compared to outside of super. Some key targets and measurements you want to meet. Right? Like as an example, inside of super, I wouldn't be buying a massive big land asset with minimal rental yield against it because it'll take it forever to pay it off inside your fund. Remember, you can't use equity inside your fund. You can only use the money inside your fund. So if you're going to buy this old property and renovate it, it's a bit of a pipe dream because you're going to have to keep waiting for your fund to go up in value. So you've got to get your headspace around that the type of asset we're looking for is a lot different from each option. Both can perform well, but we've got to make sure clients are really educated in this space because when they get there, people set it up and they get advice around it. People can still make wrong decisions here, right? Because of the type of property they buy. So it's important to get informed advice from an accountant, financial planner, and make sure you're talking to the right property people to make sure you're buying the right asset. Because if you buy one side of your super, you're going to want 2, 3, or 4 over time because you've committed to this strategy. There's certain things we need to stick to.
And I guess it's the thing I like about it, and we get to deal with a lot of people and mostly our clients are investor based, so they've got that mindset of just want to buy an asset that's going to perform, which is where I think it blends beautifully with what you do with the financial planning aspect, the property expertise, and to know which markets are doing what, so that I guess them buying by the numbers is better, particularly from a borrowing capacity perspective as well, when we're looking at potential assets that are being acquired, and particularly where it's outside super, there's the emotional content that comes into it or aspect that comes into it. Whereas what we find with the super, it's really just about the numbers. Did you want to comment on that side of it, Hamish? What you see and how you're helping people build those portfolios just based on numbers and stats?
Numbers is the number one thing for Matt and I when we're looking at the properties that we acquire inside super, because you're right, Matt, it is all numbers, right? So we want to make sure we're buying an asset that's going up in value, but we've got a relatively strong yield, right? Rental is really important because in the end, you want to pay this thing down as quick as you can to get that second asset and get that third asset. If your plan over time, the next 20 years, to buy 2 properties and pay them off outright, and as Matt said, before you get to retirement age and you don't sell them, well, that rental income's tax-free, right? So having an asset that's yielding really well gives you income on a weekly basis or monthly basis from into your pocket. So the yield is relevant, right? So for us, that's your headspace. That's find a really good balanced asset, not look too much growth, not look too much yield. Let's find something in between to make sure we're getting an asset that ticks all boxes to make sure we get to the path where we need to get to. And that's a headspace thing that people need to get their head around. Because trust me, we see a lot of clients, they come in, they go, let's buy this, and Matt's dealt with the film, and so have I. They come in and go, I want to buy this land component, I want to buy this. Guys, you buy that inside your super, that's going to take you 30 years to pay off because there's no rent, no return, all your contributions going to the property. That's not a good idea. This is what we should look to do. Here's how the numbers work. Let's look at this. That's find an investment that works to this. And then that's the path we go forward. So it's really important to get that right.
Is it, I'm just assuming some things here, but it sounds to me like more once you've done the hard work up front, i.e. do your needs analysis, work out what what's palatable for each particular client based on their risk profile. But it seems to me that given that it is so numbers based or stats based, that and it is all about, you know, how do you pay it down quickly. So as long as we can get good lenders in who understand the space, and this is where the flexibility that Matt talked about. If one person isn't able to, maybe there's a couple, or maybe there's a brother and sister that can come together, etc. You know, there's that, we have that flexibility to make the loan borrowing capacity assessment work, and then it's about potentially saying, okay, that, yes, I'm okay with those numbers. You then go and source that property,
Right.
and then is it a set and forget, Hamish? Is that part of the beauty of what One Haven does, is just allows people to not have to be overly involved?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's the numbers first, and find a property that marries up within that. Right, that's the critical. How they leverage, what they're putting in, all those sorts of differences, which obviously we'll get from the broker or the planner or the accountant. But definitely it's set and forget, and it really depends what their model or what their plan is. Like, they want to buy one, do they want to buy two, want to buy three? Like, depends how old they are, obviously, and what part of the process they're at. But definitely for us, once we get to the point of the numbers, we're just bidding a property that niches in all within that. So, and over time, let's let it go up in value, right? And then get to the next one and get to the next one. So for us, as an example, we've done some work, a lot of work in South Australia recently, really strong yielding market. Matt's aware of the project I'm about to talk about. We've had 10 townhouses get handed over recently in a project we quite liked in Brompton. But some of them have been SMSF acquisitions, right, in that process. They bought those for 600 grand. And the two bedders, the three bedders were 700 grand. They've valued 100 grand over through this period of time, but most importantly, the two bedders have just come to lease. Some of them have leased at 650 to 685 a week. Right, that is an outstanding asset, or numbers wise, for SMSF. You know, 6.5% yield, fantastic, great growth. You're balancing everything off there. So that clients have bought that, they are on their journey, and that asset's going to go incredibly well from over time. So that's a good example of a set and forget. You can't renovate that. It's brand new. Everything's ticked off. You just sit in value now. You let that go up in value over time. Let it do its thing, right? Let's wait for the next one to come up and get on the journey.
Yep. And I think there's a lot of people that we see, particularly, that are probably in the higher income earning. You know, you got family income of sort of 200 to 300 and more, and they're busy with their jobs and raising their family. So one of the things I like about it is that it is have a chat, get a strategy worked out, and then it's the first property. And then, you know, if there's at whatever point, there's a second property potentially there as well.
Yeah, it's a good point, Matt. I think Australians especially, we can be quite apathetic when it comes to our superannuation, and I think we earn more and more and more, and we kind of don't really focus on what our super is doing. I think if you asked every Australian, I'd say 8 out of 10 Australians will tell you they don't know where their super's invested, and they know the company it's with, but they don't know where it's invested, and they don't know what the returns are, and they don't know what the balance is, because you know what, someone else's problem, someone else is looking after it. What I love about self-managed super is it brings it to the table, and it gets people focused. Sorry about the dog barking. Just wait. I'll get my daughter. My daughter's fixing it. Of course, he'd choose to do that right now. And I've got the just wait, Tilly.
I love it.
My daughter's home. She's doing nothing.
Come on,
about
Billy.
It.
Give it a break, mate.
Sorry about that. Might have to edit that bit out.
All good, mate.
So
I'm leaving it in, buddy.
Yeah, why not? It shows we're human, right?
Absolutely.
So was I saying? Yeah. So what I love about it is it brings it to the table. It brings people's focus on actually thinking about their retirement, even though they might be 45 and they might be thinking, I've got 20 more years to go or 25 more years to go. Instead of just sitting off somewhere doing something, they're bringing it all in, and you've got a focus, and they're going, right, I actually want to take some responsibility for my retirement. So I'm going to use my super to buy a property, and I'm going to set a strategy up, as Hamish mentioned, not one property, but 2 properties and 3 properties. And that's a massive part of your retirement all of a sudden. Whereas opposed to, just letting it drift around somewhere, and, you've got the wife's with Hester and husband's with Australian Super or whatever it is, or AMP, and the son's with someone else and the daughter's with someone else again, and yet they could all come together and form this strategy. And it's not just a retirement strategy. Obviously, you've got the kids involved, so it's a generational it's a generational aspect that you're building assets for the next generation. So that's what I love about it. You touched about balances to start. Look, the rule of thumb is generally 2 to 250,000 in a super fund to make it viable to set up and have enough money for a deposit for the property and have money for shares. I mean, we've got to also make the point you as a superannuation director, a member of a self-managed super fund, you're responsible for your own investments, and you can't just have it all in property or all in shares. The auditor wouldn't sign off on that. So you've got to have enough in there to say that is my contribution to a property. There's my deposit, and the rest is going to be in shares or managed funds or whatever. So you've got a clear strategy that you're going to be diversified.
Wonderful. And I think that, that's a critical thing that we're seeing more and more people are seeking is they want to build a strategy and they need some assistance with that. And Hamish, that's where I'm guessing that you guys come together and assess their situation and say, okay, well, who are you? What do you want to achieve? What ages are you? What kids do you have? What are those questions around succession planning, exactly as you said, Matt, that are important to different people? Like at different stages of our life, if we're younger, we're probably not as focused on the succession planning, but as our population is aging, the baby boomers are starting to retire, we are starting to see a lot more of them that are selling investment properties and getting hit with massive capital gains positions on it. And it's unexpected because in their mind, they've got X amount of money, and then the government says, well, the tax office says, well, we're going to take X amount because you've sold an asset that's grown by 500%. So it seems to me to be a fairly clever route to have a look at is to get a strategy in place that addresses all of their concerns at that particular point in time, and then potentially bring some families together or friends together to have a look at the opportunities of collaborating. We do a lot of collaboration in what we do, and a lot of our clients are in part of joint ventures and helping each other to pool their funds or pool their skills and resources. And I like this because it is that again. It's the property side with Hamish, and it's the planning side with you, Matt, and you build a plan and then you go and execute it. So just one of the things I wanted to touch on was self-employed clients. We touched on this the other day. Any particular benefits of we deal with a lot of small business owners, and we're always, as a small business owner myself, we're always looking for ways to how do we get the benefits of, sometimes you have excess capital that you want to park, and SMSF is a great place to be able to park that, particularly given that you can leverage it by borrowing. So did you want to just touch on what you guys see particularly with self-employed people?
So look, self-employed people, make up a bigger chunk of the population than most would understand. But unfortunately, sometimes cash flow doesn't permit them to contribute into super. There's no compulsion for them to contribute into super as a business owner, director. It's your decision. If you have employees, you're mandated to contribute on their behalf. I always advise people, if you've got excess cash flow, you have an opportunity, you get that into super. And the reason being, you're going to get a tax deduction for it for a start, because as small business owners, you're always looking for a tax deduction, but also you're putting it into a vehicle that you can then use to grow your wealth towards retirement. So, but you've got to work with your accountant to make sure that you're not putting the business under any stress by putting those contributions into super. Because once they're in, you can't get them out until you retire. So we've got to get that balance. But you could have a small business owner could have an absolute cracker of a year and might not have contributed for the last 3 years, and so he or she could do concessional contributions for the last 3 years on top of non-concessional contributions. So by working with their accountant, they could actually go from not having much super at all to having over $250,000 to qualify for a self-managed super fund because they had a good year and they could make those contributions, and they would get all the deductions for those concessional contributions. The non-concessionals, they don't. Obviously, that you pay tax when it goes in, but it's in a much better tax environment once it's in there. So so look, massive opportunities for small business owners to create their wealth when they've got that excess cash flow.
Yeah, because it seems to me like we're seeing a lot of tax debt out there at the moment. The tax office is obviously chasing pretty hard, but the thing that we also see is that there's if there's a tax problem, there's generally they've made money, but potentially there's a cash flow issue and they've had to, they might be expanding their business. So there's some natural challenges of managing the cash flows with small businesses. But what I like about, again, being having a self-managed super fund and being a small business owner, I love that flexibility of being able to say, okay, we've had a good year, let's park some more in there and not pay the tax on it, or pay less, mitigate your tax, because no one wants to pay any more than they have to. And then, you've got an asset that's growing out there when you've got property attached to that. So I quite like that aspect of it, just the extra flexibility that it does provide for small business people. The other point that I wanted to just make there was just different types of properties. And probably, Hamish, this one's for you, around can you just explain to people around what the components are of buying a property? Because we do get people saying to us, look, can I buy land and then build on it and do a construction loan? So did you want to address that point?
Yeah, absolutely. So the type of asset you're buying, obviously I touched on the point before, is we want to make sure we're buying a really good yielding asset, but there are obviously restrictions around lenders and the lender requirements of what the type of properties we can buy. So the most common question we get for a lot of clients is, can we build a house or land package, or can we build a home inside our super? Well, essentially, a lot of the time it's no. If it's a two-part contract or a house and land contract, that's not compliant, not allowed to be completed inside your super fund. So if I went and bought a house and land package in Queensland or South Australia, the only way I could buy that inside my fund would have to be classified as a one-part contract, which would mean 10% down now and the remainder at settlement. That's the only way we can essentially acquire an off-the-plan property inside the super. It has to be essentially funded by the developer and completed as a one-part contract. A lot of time our acquisitions inside of super for our clients are properties either established or complete, under construction. So the properties are actually under construction, the developers release them under construction, or sometimes a lot of developers actually have funded the projects and then released them sort of 4, 6, 8 weeks away from completion of the actual project itself. They're able then to get a funder and set up those type of properties so people can acquire them inside their super fund. There's a broad range of properties we can still look to acquire, but essentially it can't accommodate the house and land construction homes inside your super. But in saying that, there's quite a number of building companies out there now, and see developers that have obviously got a good funder behind them that are now converting a lot of these house and land packages and sites to one-part contracts to give people these options around that. So townhouse sites, a lot of them are usually one-part contracts, and obviously so apartments. So they're obviously a lot of time able to acquire in there. But there's a broad section of properties we try and find for clients in it. Again, we go back to the start. What's the client's goals? What their objectives? What are they looking to get out of it? And then we'll find and marry up the property that best fits to that. And that could be said completed, off the plan, under construction. It really depends on what the client is and what they're looking to do out of this.
Yeah, so it's quite bespoke. You're tailoring a strategy and a plan of action that's based on who the client is, what their objectives are, and where they want to end up. Just one question I did have around, we do get people from time to time who, through life circumstances or whatever, they don't have the ability to live in their own home currently, so they might be renting. But then they're looking at saying, well, I do have this big chunk of super. Like, is there anything I can do, particularly with people that are, over that 50, 55, heading towards 60, they've got super. At what point can they, if they buy a property in super, because they're able to, they may not have the equity outside of it, so that's the challenge, the natural challenge some people have, but they've got a big chunk in there. Can you just talk to what happens? Are they able to move into that property? Like, is there a pathway for people to utilise their super, and then when they're of age, then move into that property so that they do have an owner occupation?
Yeah, look, there's probably more of a question for their accountant, but because there is actually a formula that basically allows them, when they actually retire, to actually use that property. The standard rule of thumb is under the SIS Act, which is the Superannuation Industry Supervision Act, that a related party can't get a benefit from an asset in a super fund. So you'd have to be retired, and then basically that property exited from the super fund as part of retirement for them to actually utilise it. But until that point in time, if it's in the superannuation fund, a related party can't have an advantage. So, for example, super funds, not just property, they can buy classic cars, they can invest in art, wine, whatever. it's all an asset, and so you can't go buy your Picasso and or your Boyd or whoever it is and hang it in the hallway so people look at it. You can't. It's got to be in storage somewhere. So it's same with your classic cars. Can't go drive it around on a Sunday. But there are a lot of super funds who invest in classic cars, wine and art. But you can only benefit those when you retire, and those exit the fund. Or they're sold out of the fund, and you take the proceeds from those, and then you go and buy something else that you
Okay.
want to do. But there are very tight rules around what benefits or what assets can be accessed by members in a super fund. So that, yeah, it's definitely speak to your accountant to get that advice.
It's good to know. The good, I guess, what we see our role as is just trying to educate people that there are options. Wonderfully, you guys are, you're playing in this space all day, every day, and you understand the nuances and just sometimes it's about, I guess, people want direction on who to speak to at what stage and just the questions to ask. If you don't know the questions to ask, you're way behind the eight ball. So I think what we love about this and our intent is to try and educate our client base as much as we can about just knowing what the options are. And I guess that's what I love about what you guys are doing. And we've already seen some results there with our clients. So wonderful to speak with you today. And thanks for just touching on those. I know they're probably each one of the things that we've talked about. There's a whole lot of depth and breadth of conversation, but just for high level, I think this is going to be handy for people to understand that there are options, and there's a lot more flexibility and potentially, just busting some of those myths around what self-managed super fund is not. What it used to be is not what it is today due to more providers, more lenders, better technology. It's not the same. It's not as painful as people at the barbecues are chatting and saying, well, it cost me $6,000 to set up a super fund and then I've got to pay $5,000 a year. Like, it's nowhere. I've done some, just some Googling around to see what some of the costs are, and they are so negligible in comparison to where they used to be, in my impression.
Efficiencies and technology have completely changed the costs of setting up and running a super fund. It really is something that, look, there's definitely a fiduciary responsibility for members and the directors of a super fund. You can never ignore that. But apart from that, everything else can be taken care of by someone else using their technology. And so it is a much more accessible way to utilise someone's super now than it used to be. And that's why I think we can now talk to a lot more people about potentially having a super fund than we could in the past.
Wonderful.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just about having a chat. Like I said, a lot of our clients, it's a broad range, but I definitely am seeing a lot of clients come through at sort of 40, 45 now that sort of get a little bit concerned about the amount of super they've got and getting more educated, and property just gives them more comfort. So from Mate and I's side, we have a lot of chats with clients just to let them know what it is. They may not do it, at least open their eyes about that. People hear about it, they just want to hear more about it. And from Matt and I, we're very open to have discussions and just go into detail and explain how the process works, what you need to do. They go away and think about it. Some people, yep, I want to do it. Some people, no, at least it was good to learn about it. Here's some more education around what the process is, what is SMSF. But that's our role. That's what Matt and I do. And our business is all around that. It's all around education, and it's no different to when we see clients around the SMSF.
Yeah. Okay. And so importantly, it's not all about SMSF, but wonderfully there is lots of opportunity there. But there's also opportunity outside of super to for people that have different needs and wants. So that's wonderful, guys. Thank you so much for your time. Appreciate that. And we'll continue to talk to our base, our base, just about learning more about it, and obviously put them in contact with you as we get some interest.
Thanks, Matt. Really appreciate it. And thanks for having us today.
Thanks, Matt. Thanks for having us, mate.
Thanks, guys.